Hi, this is Steven Strauss, known as the Checkered Shirt Guy. When I'm not traveling the world or writing all night, I'm listening to Set Lusting Bruce.
On a rattlesnake speedway in the Utah desert, I pick up my money, head back into town, driving across the Waynesburg County line. I got the radio on, but I'm just killing time, working all day in my daddy's garage, driving all night, chasing some mirage. Pretty soon, darling, I'm gonna take charge. Well, the dogs on Main Street howl 'cause they understand. If I could take this moment into my hands, mister, I ain't a boy, no, I'm a man, and I believe in the promised land.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and joining me today is, I think, third-time guest, Peter from Blogness on the Edge of Town. How you doing, Peter?
All right, Jesse, how are you?
I am doing well. I was explaining that I'd spent a little bit of time in the hospital, so I totally missed this latest round of reader and blogging, poll you just posted. So I figured, hey, I'm going to use my clout as a friend of the blog and get you on so we can talk about this to make up for the fact that I didn't get to put my 5 favorite songs on the list.
Right, this will be your chance.
Yes, absolutely. Been fairly quiet in Springsteen land, hasn't it?
It has. Well, that was sort of the motivation behind putting this poll together. This happens every time, he ends a tour. We have that period where he puts out an album and there's all that news prior to it, and then it comes out, and then there's the reviews, and then there's the tour, and we can't keep up with it. There's so much to talk about and to write about, and then nothing. It ends, and he goes on vacation somewhere, and we're all sort of sitting around, waiting for the next thing to happen.
Yeah.
So we're always looking for something to fill that time and sort of engage fans and that type of thing. And I thought, well, we've had some success with polls in the past. What if we went there? And this time I went. I think I made a bit off a little more than I could chew. Actually, it wound up being a little overwhelming. We've done sort of more smaller scale polls in the past. We did a few years ago. We did asked for his best songs of the 2000s, and of course there haven't been that many, so it's a nice manageable number. But this time we decided, let's go all out. We want to find the quintessential Springsteen song. The best, most, even better than best or favorite. The song that says Springsteen to you, and we left it open-ended. I put a form in there, wasn't multiple choice. It wasn't, people, don't choose from these 10. It was like pick 5 and put whatever you want in there, and we were sort of overwhelmed with the response.
Yeah, and I want to get that into specific, but I wanted to go back just a little bit. To me, this feels a quieter time because we spent such a year and a half of such always something else coming up, right? Like we got the Ties That Bind, and we're going to do a box set, and oh my God, now we're going to do a little tour, and now we're going to do a bigger tour, and now we're going to go to Europe, and oh my goodness, now he's put out his autobiography, and oh goodness,
right.
There's bookstores, and it seems like for a year and a half, there was something new almost weekly for Springsteen.
Well, exactly, and even more so, you're right, than in previous sort of breaks. We had this very intense period of activity, And because he never announces anything,
Right.
More than a few weeks in advance, it seems, you have these artists who, it seems like they have their whole career planned out years in advance, and the album's coming out in 6 months, the tour starts in 9 months. We're gonna be on this show and do this thing. And with Springsteen, it's like it seems, okay, album in 2 weeks. What? And John Landau, his manager, has been quoted in things saying, this is just how we do things. We're not very organized. And I think a lot of that is Bruce just deciding, now's the time. We're going to do this right now. He doesn't want to. Once he makes that decision, he doesn't want to sit around and wait. So we, as the fans, are sort of being constantly fed these surprises. And then you're right. This time, it was a year and a half, and then nothing.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, that's like his, the set list, and we used to joke about, they made the joke that, you play the first song and then the set list goes out the window, and that's not necessarily the truth, especially when he's promoting an album. The first 3 or 4 songs may be the same, though mixed up a little bit, but, especially in this past tour, he really did shake up things fairly often, and so I guess the way he builds a set list is the way he builds a career. At this point, he's Janice from accounting. He just doesn't give an F, and he's just like, oh, I feel it, I'm going to do it.
Right, and he's earned that.
Yes,
certainly earned that freedom over many decades of earning political capital, or whatever you want to call it. He's going to do it the way he wants to do it.
Yeah, and I think many times have said, when we talk about songs and wanting to hear things live, the majority of us will say, hey, I don't care what he plays as long as he's playing, and which leads to you kind of, you're going to do this poll, and so were you asking for not necessarily, and I'm going to have you repeat yourself, not necessarily your 5 favorite songs, not necessarily the 5 songs you think are best, but just what were the rules, kind of guidelines you gave to your readers?
Right. Well, the headline of the first post that had the actual poll in it was it was called "What's the Springsteeniest Springsteen song that's ever been Springsteen?" So basically, we're just asking, what is the quintessential Bruce song, the one that really stands out as emblematic of his best work. So because to ask people to pick just one was really just would be torturous. So we opened it up to 5. We figured once you get beyond 5, we're really getting into the weeds. So everybody had the opportunity to pick their 5 songs that fit that criteria, and then we would take it from there. And we said there weren't too many guidelines other than to say, original versions. We're not going to, include "Racing in the Street" '78 or one of these, outtakes or alternate versions that have come out since. We said, but outtakes, that are of songs that weren't already on an album, but they were on tracks, for instance. Those were fine, although not many of them rose to the top in the end. And we said avoid covers unless it's one of his signature covers. Like, okay, if you want to put Jersey Girl on there, that's fine, but not something he did once in Buffalo 8 years ago, Yeah. So, but other than that, we said just, go to town. These are, look at his catalog. We provided a list of every song he's done. And we asked people to just, pick the ones they thought, fit the bill and report back with the 5. And like I said, we did a form so people could just type in. So that's the other interesting thing. When you have a form, and people are doing it out of memory, it's interesting what some people remember. The song "Jungle Town" got a vote. That was my favorite. And there were a couple others that were not quite there. And also then there were the songs that Bruce didn't even do. A couple of John Mellencamp songs got votes. "Summer of '69" I think got a vote. So so it was really interesting responses there.
Yeah, and so I will. Yeah, there's some things like Jungle Town, you thought maybe autocorrect, kind of worked on it, but Summer of '69, it's hard to believe that's that Microsoft, blaming Microsoft on it. Um, you shared your kind of some numbers, and it looks like you had over 5,000 responses. Now,
Right.
5,000 total votes. So if you divide it by five, that's over, 1,100 people voting. Though I'm
Right.
sure
It was
not everyone voted five songs, right?
right. Well, it was actually the number of respondents was 1,245.
Wow.
But you're right. Some people did all five. Some people did just one, and then everyone in between. So the total number of votes at the end were 5,619, and that's what I was talking about being a little overwhelmed. Thank God for Google.
Yes.
The form just shoves it right to that spreadsheet, and then you're able to figure it out from there. But it was So we're talking about almost 6,000 votes, and what was interesting, even though Springsteen has this huge catalog of songs to choose from, and so many people have so many different favorites, 3,297 of the almost 6,000 votes were for the top 10 finishers in the poll. So those top 10 got the vast majority of the votes, well more than half. And then the other, 2,000 plus votes after that went to 179 other songs. So there was a pretty clear consensus, I think, among the 1,200 people who responded to this about which songs really rose to the top.
Yeah, and I've often joked that Land of Hope and Dreams, Better Days are my two favorite Bruce Springsteen songs, and the third song changes every day.
Right.
And if I had to go down five, I would include, of course, Thunder Road and Born to Run and American Land, and then you keep going on and on and on. But I think what's more interesting is your question of what is the most Springsteen-ish Springsteen song. So that
Right.
maybe it's not a song that you actually, love, or a song that has a great personal meaning to you, but it is just a very classic. If there was like a Johnny Cash song, Folsom Prison Blues, that's a classic Johnny Cash song. Whether you like the song or not, that just says everything about it. So I thought that was a very interesting choice and a cool way to think of this, because we all have songs that we're passionate about and that mean a lot to us, but to kind of put it on a distance and go, okay, this is such a, a lot of people joke that Barry Manilow's I Write the Songs, which he did not write, is in a lot of ways
Right.
a very typical Barry Manilow song, even though he didn't write it. And I think the same thing for Jersey Girl, right? Even though he didn't write it, that could be and I see it got a fair amount of votes. So, what surprised you besides the volume of the results of the poll?
There were a few outliers that I did find surprising. I mean, for the most part, like I said, those top 10 songs that got the vast majority of the votes. We could get into those later. I don't think there were any huge surprises up there.
Right.
But you go a little deeper into it. The Ghost of Tom Joad, for instance, came in 14th out of the 179. So it made the top 20, the top 15. I think it got 80 votes, and that's not one you necessarily think of. It's newer. It's on an album that people don't usually sort of pull out among his greatest albums. It was a smaller audience for that album, but and obviously the song has taken on a higher profile in recent years. When he did the version with Tom Morello, he's done it in concert a lot more often. But that one surprised me that it finished that high up. There were certain songs that I thought would do better, like "Prove It All Night" feels like just a classic, Springsteen song, sort of an emblematic of the Darkness album, and I think that it did well. I think it's in the top 20, but it's not, it didn't rise to the top. I think it got 50 some odd votes. And then there's, I thought some of those track songs that people really love, and they sort of like to hold it up when they get one in concert, like Frankie.
Yeah.
They didn't do well.
Yeah.
they still I think are on the peripheral in terms of got these diehard fans that feel like, yes, that is the Springsteen song. But the average fan, as much as they might like them, they're not going to pull it out as the thing that says Springsteen to them.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was interesting is I did a pivot table because that's what I do in in my job, and Tracks was the album that had the most by count, and you go, okay, because Tracks is so big, but then The River had 18 songs, and do you think that's because we just went through a River tour? And is that why a lot of people's songs that On the River you think made this list?
I mean, that's certainly possible. It's top of mind,
yeah.
From the last couple of years. And again, a lot like it's similar to Tracks. It's the volume. There are two discs worth of, or 2 albums worth of songs there, and they didn't. It was the third in terms of overall votes. It was also the third place album. So, again, part of it is volume, but right. I think part of it is that it's fresh in our minds, and part of it is it's just there's a lot of great songs on there
yes.
that, that would have done well anyway, but I think the fact that we just saw them at concert certainly helped.
I think so. Okay, so, Peter, I think that I would have... Hello, thank you, Charlie wants to talk. I certainly, if I was going to pick the 5 that I thought, I would do Atlantic City, Rosita, Come Out Tonight, Born to Run, Thunder Road, and then I would have picked Land of Hope and Dreams, just because I think the optimism of that song, to the counterbalance of the times that he is so dark, those would be my 5. That if I was building a little 5-disc mixtape to go, this is what represents Bruce to me, those would be the 5 I pick. So I got, 3 of the top 10. Had you in your mind thought about what you would pick, or did you leave yourself totally open?
I tried to leave myself open. I did think about it, although I did not vote. In the poll myself. But of course I thought about what I would do. But in preparation for our chat today, I actually sat down and said, okay, now what would I have voted in this poll that might have been different? So the ones I came up with, Thunder Road is always my number 1, and it was obviously for many, many people
right.
who responded here. I think Jungle Land, just for sort of its epic scope and it's sort of the literary brilliance of it, that's his epic, in my mind. I pick Land of Hope and Dreams too. I think it definitely fits, like you said, his sort of the optimism there, and the fact that we're all in this together. This train carries saints and sinners. That's right near the top for me every time. I like the any number of songs on Darkness could do it for me, but I think I settled on The Promised Land. Because again, I feel like it's about it's breaking out and trying to do something when life is taking your choices away. I mean that just the whole theme of it, the dogs on Main Street howl. I mean it really that feels like Springsteen's entire message encapsulated in that song. And then I think you have to and then there it's so hard not to go sort of with the personal. I think the 5th one has to be Born to Run, right? It's got to be Born to Run because it's Born to Run. It's Born to Run. And if I wanted to go for a complete out of left field choice, I'd pick None But the Brave, which is just, but again, I think that's more of just a personal choice.
Right.
I just think it's a sort of a brilliant song about getting older and what your old relationships mean to you when, as time goes by. And I just think it's just such a great song, and it does fit into, what the types of things he tackles in his themes, but got to go Born to Run.
Yeah.
You just have to.
The other thing, and I found pretty interesting, is your top 7 by vote gets are pretty high. I guess we'll start. Number 10, Rosita Come Out Tonight, got 136 votes. Number 11 was Incident on 57th Street, 126. So while it was a little bit close, it was not, not like by 1 or 2 votes, the 10. And then when you throw in New York Serenade 98, it's pretty clear, your 10 was a pretty, high, I guess, vote get. I think that's a really fun song. I think it's an especially good song, live, and the joy, it does feel like a party. So I think that's, the listeners did a great job on that one. Any thoughts on it as we go through the 10?
Yeah, I agree. I think, because you have to, part of what he does is the fun of it. It's not all, I lost my job at the factory and life is horrible now, and, I'm just going to think about how it was better, before. He has that. But he also has, hey, this is rock and roll, this is fun, this is life, this is what it means to feel like living. And that, Rosalita, I mean, that just captures it. I think that's the first clip I ever saw of him live, that famous clip that he released, I guess, in the late 70s or early 80s from the Darkness tour. And it's just, I just remember thinking, oh, my God, I'd never seen anything like it. Even on my little TV, you could tell, what that must be like to see that in person. So yeah, I think it definitely fits in with the rest.
So number 9, Promised Land, got 152 votes. The first song from Darkness. I just, I ain't a boy, I'm a man, and I believe in a promised land is just such a strong lyric, and the music is very good on this. It is, it's hard to pick favorite songs off, albums that are so strong, but there is something about the Promised Land that I enjoy, and it is always a good song to hear. So, and it kind of, it raised the, I guess another level of got, over 150 votes. So, I think it is a very typical Bruce song.
Yeah, I think it fits the mold, and it it was a big. I like the fact, that it takes place in Utah, not in Freehold. Yes. It was like him branching out. Showing that everybody has these, is facing these sort of these problems and these choices in their lives, no matter where you are or what your background is, and. I always like that, he has the lyric about, take a knife and cut this pain from my heart. I mean, that's, it's very, it's simple. It's not this complicated metaphor, but it really, he just does such a great job of capturing what that feeling must be like. So that, that's just one of the reasons that song always stands out for me.
I totally agree. Number 8 was Darkness on the Edge of Town. I think, in a lot of ways, Darkness on the Edge of Town is what a J. Michael Straczynski from Babylon 5 would be a title to a Babylon 5 episode. I know that Arrow Writers has actually used
yes.
Darkness as they've actually done for several seasons of Arrow. The next to last episode has had featured a Bruce Springsteen title, which I think is such lovely geekness. Cool. Yes.
He's everywhere.
He is everywhere, and there is such a I hate to use cliche, but it is such a, because you tend to think of Bruce as the I lost my job, downbound train kind of song that, I'm struggling, I'm hurt, my girlfriend's dumped me, I don't have a job, what am I going to do? And so you certainly know that Darkness was going to make this thing, and I'm actually a little surprised it's not higher.
Yeah, I think it's so hard to choose a song, or even a handful of songs off of Darkness. I mean, it's such a great album from beginning to end. It touches on so many of the same themes, and so a lot of it becomes to which one spoke to you. But because this is the title track, I think that's one of the reasons that, it finished a little higher than some of the others. It just sort of encapsulates the thoughts of the album. And it's such a dark, to coin a phrase, ending to the album. It was not a light album to begin with, but it had some glimmers of hope on there. And then you get to this, this ending track, and nothing's going right for this guy.
Yeah.
And it was a daring choice, I thought, and to end the album with the title track. And it's worth noting that every single song on Darkness got at least a vote. So every song on the album they finished in the poll somewhere. Same with Born to Run, and Nebraska, incidentally. Even though Nebraska as a whole didn't rise too far to the top, every song got at least a vote or two.
I think Nebraska is, the cliche is the non-Springsteen fans will have Nebraska in their album collection and will go, I'm into his darker stuff, man.
Right.
Even though they will be, I think if you put them in the pit, they're going to be taking their hands up on Badland like everyone else.
Right.
Okay, Backstreets went to a different level. Number 7, Backstreets, 253 votes. So there's a pure gap, a pretty big gap between number 7 and number 8. I think Backstreets from the web presence and, the websites and everything. So I wasn't surprised it made the list. It's not a personal favorite of mine, though I don't have anything against it. It's just, I'm glad to see it made it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this strikes me as one of his classic, friendship songs, and there's even been debate over the years about whether Terry was a man or a woman, and whether this is a friendship or a relationship. And my argument was that it doesn't really matter, but it's about the friendship or relationship, and that has gone south for whatever reason, and how that can really just sort of tear you apart inside. And it's a great live song, so that plays into people's choices too, I think. Sometimes you can't not hear that live version you saw yourself in your head when you're thinking of this song. It's hard to sort of look at it in a vacuum and look at the recorded version that came out in 1974 and this is what I'm going to base it on. You've had a history with these songs in so many different iterations, and I think that it plays into it also.
I totally agree, Peter. So then we go to Racing in the Streets, 264, so a close, very easily Backstreets and Racing could have been swapped. Racing in the Streets is such another epic Darkness song. I know that a lot of the fans that is a favorite. Some of the people on Twitter that I see, this is a song they always want to hear live, and so there's a lot of passionate following about this one. Anything to add about Racing?
I mean, it is just a classic. I think it's that long coda at the end really elevates the song, and Danny Federici and Roy Bittan, the way their keyboards work together. It's just you can hear it in your head, and you're marveled at it without even listening to it. And I think that because it's such a sort of a, it tells such a dark story, and rather than even try for a happy ending, so to speak, it just goes into that long wordless coda at the end that sort of wraps it up wordlessly, which I think is very brilliant. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see it up there.
Yeah. So then we get to number 5. We're halfway through the list. The River. 270. Once again, there's not a lot of separation between these three. I know my personal story of The River is I was at a show and, somebody had a sign, "Hey, it's my 19th birthday. Can you play The River?" And my friend and I who were at the show together, it's like, does he know what The River's about? I mean, just because it's your 19th birthday? I mean, hey, let's celebrate my birthday.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it's, I guess all of his songs are autobiographical, but this is certainly the story of his family, and I have talked to people on the show that feel very, very in touch to this song. That there are people that have unplanned pregnancies and have beat the odds and made their marriage happy, and the love fading away and figuring out this, how do you make a new a family through this new dynamic. So it is, and I think also because he played it a lot during this last year and a half, it certainly has an emotional attachment to a lot of people. So I was not surprised that it made it that high.
Right. I think it. What I had said in my little write-up of it is that the thing, the sort of brilliance of this song is the situation he is singing about is so common. I mean, how many people has this happened to? Like you said, with the unplanned pregnancy, but even without that, the marriage that maybe isn't what you thought it would be, and the dead-end job, and these are things that happen to millions of people. But he makes it so relatable and personable, and it's sort of an epic tragedy for the people it's happening to, even though this happens every day all over the world to millions of people. So that's why I think this song is so universal. And we did a poll, one of our last really successful poll that we did was asking people for their most striking Springsteen lyric. And that one, I think we did narrow it down to 100 or some crazy number that people chose from. And is a dream a lie if it don't come true, or is it something worse? Finished number 1. That was the people thought that was his most striking lyric, and it always struck me. I mean, it's devastating. The worst thing it can be is a lie. I'm sorry, the best thing it can be is a lie, but it's probably worse than that. So they talk about sort of a devastating blow of a lyric. So I think that clearly that resonated with people, and that's one of the reasons the song finished so high up.
Yeah, and I think back to I guess Doonesbury had done a series of strips way back in the dark ages where Jimmy Thudpicker was talking to Dylan, and the Dylan character in the comic strips is like, I was just trying to make it rhyme, and Thudpicker looks at the audience like, who knew, right? I think you wonder where some of these lyrics come from, because there is that is a dream alive that don't come true, or is it something else? The lie, and that lyric. There are books that could be written about that discussion, and there's so much, and I've been lucky enough to be married for 30 years, and I know how much effort and work and ups and downs there is in a marriage, and so very just so much more, as you said, not just the pregnancy, but just the working in a job and trying to find your joy and what you do. It is pretty amazing. All right, so then we get to Badlands, the happy sad song that that makes 311 votes, so it brings us to a different level. Um, you wonder if that is, and I'm going to just say, I think a lot of this is the live anthem part of it, and just
Yeah.
there is something about when he comes out on stage and they start that guitar riff, and then speaking of lyrics, right? Poor man want to be rich, rich man want to be king, king not happy till he, has everything, as I
Yeah.
misquote it.
Welcome to America.
Yeah, it is, and it is. I think about that every time I read about um, a an athlete and going through a contract negotiation, and in the discussions of people and where it's just so funny, and so yeah, and it is a song that I don't get tired of hearing live. One of my best friends does. He's like, God, I could, if I could promise he would not play Badlands, I would take any other song. And I'm like, no, I love Badlands. So, made the top four.
Yeah, and again, it just says it's so much about what he stands for, and it ain't no sin to be glad you're alive. That's such a classic line, and it speaks to that hope that is there even in his most of his darkest work, that there is some hope for escape, and that's that's apparent in this song, I think.
Yeah. So then we get to the top three. Jungleland, 421. I am not surprised it made third. Jungleland is a song that is beloved by a lot of fans. I do not have a emotional connection to Jungleland. I think intellectually I understand that it's this epic, story, but it is not one of my favorites, though I get why people think it is and why they love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, it is, for me, again, I just remember sort of the way I got into Bruce is and people don't like to admit they came in during the Born in the USA
Yes.
stage of his career, but that's what I did. I was, a young lad of 14 or 15 when that album came out, so I was not well versed in, a lot of the music that had already been out there. So this was new to me. I heard Dancing in the Dark, and when I ran out and got that album, and I was like, oh, I gotta figure out what this guy's all about. So of course I went and bought Born to Run, because that was the Springsteen album that everybody talked about. And I remember just sitting and listening to the whole thing straight through. And of course it ends with Jungleland, and I, at 14 or however old I was at the time, I'd never heard anything like it. And it just struck me as so daring, and so, I don't think I realized this at the time, but what I've come to realize is, again, it's so literary in the way it tells this story, with imagery and metaphor, and, and the barefoot girl sitting on the hood of a Dodge, these images that just evoke such clear pictures in your mind. But I think that's why it has stuck with me all these years, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. And then, of course, the saxophone solo, and I think particularly since his passing, people are, Clarence is such a beloved figure, and even more so sort of since he's gone, that we still have that solo to hold on to from him. So that elevates it, I think, too, in people's memories and in their minds. So yeah, it's not a big surprise to see it near the top.
Yes, and I do think that it was a beloved song, and now then, as you said, with Clarence gone, it's almost another level. Also because he does not play it live as much. I mean, it is almost like it's a sacred we're not going to bring this out and play with it. It's the good china. We're only going to
Right.
bring this out in special
Right.
occasions, so that Jake and them can do it. So it's pretty amazing. So 2-1, Born to Run, Thunder Road. Fairly close numerical, 656 for Born to Run, Thunder Road 674.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I was following. We had the poll open for about a week and a half, I think, and so I was following the results, and it was these two neck and neck from moment one.
Yes.
And I kept checking back. Ooh, who's in the lead? Thunder Road pretty much stayed ahead the whole time, but not by much. It was very, very close the whole time.
And I've shared with you that I'm hoping in the next month or so, this whole hospital stay has kind of delayed things, but I want to do a series of cage matches because the guys on Bruce Springsteen's The Alphabet said it was a waste that with the name Jesse Jackson, I did not use Jackson Cage somehow in my name of my podcast. So I want to do a cage mask and where you would discuss, Thunder Road or Born to Run. Only one can win. Of the two, which one would, if you could only have one, what would it be? A true cage match. And we're going to have some others that are, beloved songs that you wouldn't want to, you wouldn't want to pick out. You wouldn't want to, like maybe 10th Avenue and Rosita or something. So, it is really hard to choose between these two. And I can remember, of all things, on a sports station, there was a Babe Laufenberg, who is a backup Cowboy quarterback and then became a broadcaster here, a local news anchor, talking to a columnist for the Dallas Morning News, and they spent 10 minutes discussing that Thunder Road's the greatest rock and roll song of all time. And he went, no, Born to Run is the greatest rock and roll song of all time. For non-Bruce fans, I'm sure they were like, shut up already. But for us, it was a fascinating discussion. I personally think Thunder Road is more emotional and a little more very Bruce-ish. But if it had been flipped, I wouldn't have argued.
Right. I tend to feel the same way. I mean, like I said, Thunder Road, maybe because when I went back to listen to Born to Run for the first time, that was the first song I heard. Maybe that had something to do with it. And, just the way that, he plays with the tempo over the course of the song and the way it builds and, that ending, "It's Town Full of Losers, I'm Pulling Out Here to Win," and Clarence's sax bursts in. I mean, it's really just something. And there's a reason both of these songs, I think, they do not sound like 40-year-old songs. Even today, even though they've been played so much, there's something about them that's crisp and fresh and doesn't feel like classic rock. It's this is there's something the whether it's the energy or just the way the songs are constructed. And I think, if anything, Born to Run, hasn't, by a very, very slim margin, hasn't aged as well. I think just because of it's played so much. I think, if there's a sort of an overplay factor, that might be the thing that, pushes Born to Run down that, very, very slim margin there. But it's an amazing song. He wanted to, come up with the greatest rock and roll record he'd ever heard, and I think he did it.
Yeah.
It's just a ball of energy, and it captures so much of who he is and what he wanted to do. But I think Thunder Road has what Born to Run doesn't have is sort of the melancholy that's part of his, his overarching themes. And Thunder Road really does have that, particularly in the beginning. It's plaintive almost when the harmonica comes in, and I think that for me is what pushes it into that top slot.
Now, what I find a little interesting, and this will be a flashback to um, your discussion of Bruce's best album, um, very interesting. The top 10, you had For Darkness and For Born to Run.
Yeah.
And so the now Born to Run did a little better for the top 3, but Darkness still, was up there, carrying its own. So it is, and I think, it's hard to debate that, you know, a pretty good 1-2 punch for a young guy from Jersey putting out a couple albums, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's what a run. It's really, unbelievable to look at. And he had obviously a lot of time to ruminate on Darkness because he couldn't record during that lawsuit period after Born to Run.
Yeah.
And he had a very specific idea about what he wanted to do. And as we know now from the Promise release, that the album that would have been released in between those two, had he been able to, would have been very different. I think much
Yeah.
soulful and much lighter. So it's interesting sort of where history came down on what he did with those two albums. But
Yeah.
so if you look at it, like you were saying about the votes, like I mentioned, both albums, every single track on both albums got a vote at least from somebody. Born to Run actually though got more than twice the number of total votes that Darkness got, 2,100 versus Darkness's 1,007, and it had 2 fewer tracks to do it on. So I think what that probably says is even, and I think to this day when people talk about the Springsteen sound, they're thinking of that Born to Run sound with the piano and the saxophone, and and the irony being he sort of left a lot of that behind immediately and never went back to it.
Yeah.
Darkness doesn't sound like Born to Run, and the River has there's elements of it all the way through, but not to that sustained level that he had on Born to Run. But from the results here, it's reasonable to say, well, but that's what when people think of Springsteen, that's what they think of. This 40-plus-year-old album, sort of really stands out. But I think, as I talked about in my book, Glory Days, Springsteen's greatest albums, available at Amazon for only $2.99. End of plug. Darkness pushes its way to the top for me. And again, it's one of these things that it can change every day, depending on which
Sure.
album I listen to more recently. But I think the maturity of Darkness, of sort of tackling the idea of escape isn't always an option, and then what do you do when once you hit that wall? Whereas Born to Run is more like we're pulling out of here to win. Eat my dust kind of thought to it. And in the end, the 1-2 punch of them, take them, if you can't pick one, take them both. Because I think that, if you take both of those albums, it really captures the whole thing.
I think so. And, there is, it is not a competition. We get both. It's always a fun discussion to kind of have what's, going on and what's doing it. But luckily, we do get, we get both and we get to see. So Peter, thank you. This was a blast. It was absolutely, it's always a joy talking Bruce with you. What do you got coming up on the blog now that you've kind of taken this massive undertaking in? What are you thinking about next?
Well, we do have some ideas to continue sort of the reader engagement idea, given that it may be a while before we see any big news. Although you never know with him, could be coming tomorrow.
Yes.
But I think we're looking at possibly trying to collect people's Springsteen stories, whether they were personal meetings with him or just things that that either a concert or a record has meant to them. and we're just going to try to keep up with the news. There's supposedly this quote unquote solo album. I think they've been talking about it for 5 years now. It's been in the can since before Wrecking Ball, I think. And John Landau mentioned it as recently as last year in a Rolling Stone article, although I think Bruce may have indicated to them that now in Trump's America, he's feeling a need to move on to other things. So who knows? This may be, it may be an archive release in 20 years that we're never going to see today. But we'll be keeping up on the news on that or whatever else comes along the pike. We're constantly trolling around trying to figure out what's next and getting the latest information and getting it up as soon as we can, just to keep everybody informed. And in the meantime, we'll just roll with it like everybody else.
Well, that sounds good. Yes, it is. Like I said, I spent a few weeks in the hospital, and so I did not get to check. And but you are a blog I go through on a daily basis just to check and see what's going. It's always fun. And what's new with pet peeves?
We are still working on that's our comic strip that I do with a very talented artist named Dave London about a sort of pop culture obsessed dad and his family's adventures. And in fact, Bruce does put in an appearance every so often. We recently collected for a post on Blogness all of the pet peeve strips that mention Bruce and other music acts and references to music. It's definitely a theme that runs through the strip. So we're still, that's about a year old, and we're farming that out to various people, and you might see more of that coming up. We'll see where that goes.
Well, sign me up for the first Kickstarter backer on a collection. I love them, and I will tell you, there is just so much joy. Whether it's talking about fitted sheets and folding them, which was a really good one, or the whole no adult should be holding a sign, and then they kind of look, unless it's for a Bruce Springsteen show. It's kind of there is
right. So basically, when I guess the Bruce Springsteen themed strips are aimed direct at the diehard fans. I make no bones about it, and if they get a kick out of it, I've done my job.
Well, like I say, I love that it is a little bit zits. It's a little bit, just wonderful, family interaction, and I just love the strip. So I'm very excited for you and happy. So Peter, if someone wants to reach you and if they want to share their Springsteen story first, they should reach out to me because I want to have them on the podcast. But yes, for the Blogness as well. Tell them, how can they reach you?
Your best bet is to just head over to the blog, Google Blogness on the Edge of Town, and it'll come right up. And you'll see our contact information and our email. And, you could always go to Facebook, search for the Blogness page on Facebook and leave a comment or send a message there. Every time we have a new post, we share it there. So following us on Facebook is probably your best way to go.
That sounds great. You can reach me at Jesse Jackson DFW and at Setlisting Bruce on Twitter. We do have a Facebook page as well. And please, if you get a chance, go to iTunes or whatever your podcast player choice and leave a rating and review. It is how people find us. Peter, this was a blast. Thank you. This was my first Springsteen podcast since I'd been out of the hospital, and I cannot think of a better guest or a better topic to talk. So thank you, sir.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, and I'm sure when news breaks, I'll have you on again.
Excellent.
Thank you, Peter. All right, talk to you later, and thank you, listeners.